Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much, Yamina, for your invitation. I'm really thrilled to be with you today for the launch of the World Sufficiency Lab. And I would like to share with you some of the experience of France in terms of policy to encourage sufficiency. So as David mentioned, the world sufficiency, which we call sobriété en français, first made it into French law back in 2015. But even though it was in the law, it didn't really become a reality until much later. It was actually almost taboo for a large part of politicians up until recently. It was understood as degrowth. It has a pejorative ring to it. And really, the switch came in 2022. I believe the first time President Macron used the phrase sufficiency, it was during the presidential campaign of 2022, just a couple weeks before the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And so, of course, this was during the energy crisis, and this played a major role in helping spread the concept. So in the summer 2022, President Macron set an objective to reduce our electricity and gas consumption by 10% within 2 years. So the objective was reached within 1 year, and it was a little bit exceeded because the drop in electricity and gas consumption in 1 year was 12%, adjusted for climate variation. So of course, this happened in a context of high energy prices. But you have to bear in mind that in France, the price of energy rose rather less than in other European countries because of the social measures that were adopted to limit the increase. So high energy prices alone, they cannot explain the drop in consumption. But it also happened at a time of very strong emotion about what was happening in Ukraine and a very strong willingness to free ourselves from our dependency on Russian gas and to regain our energetic sovereignty. And it was also the first time in over 40 years that we faced blackouts in France. I had never heard of it before. And so it was really a time where everyone, be it individuals or businesses or municipalities, everyone was wondering how they could help, what they could do at their level. And it's really the method for building the government was to build upon this emotion to turn it into a nationwide effort for energy sufficiency. And the objective was really to make sure that everyone participated and to make sure that we asked efforts from big businesses and public institutions before we asked efforts from households or small businesses. And David mentioned the importance of social justice. It was very important at the time to recognize that for the energy poor, the objective was rather to increase consumption, to enable them to heat their homes adequately and help them face the increase in the price of energy rather than ask them to do more effort to reduce their emissions. So between July and September 2022, we met with over 300 business federations, and we agreed with them on all sorts of measures for each sector, be it retail, building, sports, there's swimming pools, hotels, movie theaters, the advertising industry, street lighting. Everyone had to do something. Everyone had to do their share. So some of the major measures that were deployed then was reducing the temperatures to 19 degrees in offices. This was actually something, it wasn't new, but nobody really did it. And for the first time, people started actually doing it, reducing the temperature to 90 degrees Celsius in offices. And it really helped. The doctor said that 19 degrees is a good temperature for your health, and that in bedrooms, it can even be less. There were new incentives for people to install thermostats in their home, reduce the temperatures of hot water in our boilers to 55 degrees Celsius, new incentives to install building automation and control systems, which can enable a 15% energy reduction. And in France, they will be mandatory from 2027. New incentives to carpool, new incentives to work from home, for civil servants. Civil servants were also asked to reduce their speed on the highway to 110 kilometers per hour. And there were some measures that were more symbolic, but nevertheless important. It was forbidden for businesses to leave their doors open if the heating or the air conditioning is on, and also to switch off advertising screens between 1 and 6 a.m. And there was a major communication campaign that was deployed, which was the biggest since the COVID campaign. And there were, challenges for households to reduce their energy consumption, compare with their friends, comparisons between businesses. And I really believe that there was pride in participating in this nationwide effort. And it really helped that the importance of sufficiency at that time was recognized by IPCC. It really helped in our national context as well. And so this is how we made it through the winter of 2022-2023 without power cuts. And then there was a risk that people would say, okay, we've made it through the winter. The prices of energy are going down. We can relax now. We can go back to consuming energy the way we did. But so far, it seems not to be the case. It seems that the good habits have taken roots and the consumption has not gone up for now. And so this has played a major role in the reduction of our CO2 emissions, which have gone down by almost 6% last year. But of course, sufficiency, it's not just about making it through one winter or two winters. It's really about making it through the century. And there is absolutely no way that we will reach carbon neutrality without a drastic reduction of our energy consumption. Our goal is to reduce energy consumption by half by 2050 compared to 2021. And if you look at the share of sufficiency in reaching those goals, we have this modeling of how we can reach our target by 2030. And it shows that sufficiency alone can account for 10% of the emission abatement we need to do to reach our 2030 emission reduction target. So it's a major, major part of our reaching our goals. And beyond energy efficiency, building on the success of what we achieved with energy, the approach is being deployed beyond. So we have now a water sufficiency plan, which was adopted last year. We're implementing land use sufficiency measures, as well as materials sufficiency. It's not just about recycling, it's about the functionality economy. How do you refurbish instead of throwing away? How do you rent instead of buying? How do you borrow? And just generally about, buying and using less stuff. And our projections to 2050 show that this is absolutely indispensable to reach our climate goals. But for that to happen, there is a need for a sufficiency reflex when designing policies or considering investment decisions. The idea is that when you take a policy decision, when you consider an investment, you put yourself in a sufficiency state of mind and think, is that still the right decision? Is that the right investment? And this is something that we need to work on in France, but at European level, at international level. And I really I shared with you what I had to share with you for our experience in France, but I would really like to hear from others on what they can teach us and how we can learn from each other. And so I really commend Yamina and the team and David on the creation of this World Sufficiency Lab. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you very much for attending today's launch of the World Sufficiency Lab and for your encouraging words. And one of the reasons why this World Sufficiency Lab has been established is to create a sufficiency community to share sufficiency experiences and best practices, to bring them from different regions of the world, to make sure that we have cross-fertilization on sufficiency practices and policies. I will now take you a little bit through the web platform that we have. This is a beta platform. We are just starting our work. The sufficiency is we start with this with the definition that we included in the IPCC report, which makes sufficiency articulated around 4 pillars. First, sufficiency is a set of policies and daily practices or social practices. So it's not about behavior change of individuals, it's about collective effort. And these policies avoid demand, as mentioned by Diane, of all natural resources. So in the case of France, we started with energy sufficiency, and then now the French government is moving towards sufficiency for material, for land, and for water. And just to back up a little bit, sufficiency is not new concept. We do find in the literature from the Greek time sufficiency concept. The novelty is that sufficiency to be used in policy design, it was Thailand who has first done this in the 90s. And in the OECD countries, France is the only country where sufficiency appears in the energy transition law. And thankfully, now sufficiency is extended to other natural resources. And 2 important points about sufficiency. Sufficiency is about within country equity. So it's about delivering well-being for all. It's not austerity. It's not a burden on the low income ones. It's the opposite. It's protection for the low income. And sufficiency is also about equity between countries and between generations. And to be able to arrive to this definition is based on a literature review of more than 1,000 publications. However, these publications do not all mention sufficiency explicitly, and that's why it was a bit challenging. And this is why we are having this web platform. And the idea is the aim of the Sufficiency Lab is to build the international sufficiency community, and to build this community looking to good practices in building communities. What we will have is three different tools. One of them is the Sufficiency Library. Sufficiency Library is basically like Wikipedia for sufficiency, where you will find, when it will be operational, where you will find information about the sufficiency measures, where they have been implemented, how they have been implemented, what are the challenges that they have been faced, and what is the real impact of sufficiency measures when they have been evaluated. And if they have not been evaluated, then you will have the information that they are not yet evaluated. And this is one way to empower the sufficiency community. Another way is the Sufficiency Academy, where we will start from September providing trainings on sufficiency. And this webinar launch is also an opportunity for call to the scientific community, but also to the practitioners who are already implementing sufficiency measures to join us to prepare a training program on sufficiency starting from September. How we are organized? So the funding members are, as David mentioned, myself, David, and Samuel, a French colleague. And then we will have a scientific committee. And I use the opportunity of today's launch to inform you that we are launching a call for expression of interest to the scientific community who would like to join our scientific committee to give us advice to make sure that our deliverables are sound scientific from scientific perspective. And we will also have a hub committee. The hub committee, the way we see the Sufficiency Lab is that we have this international umbrella that is currently based in Paris. And then from this international umbrella, we will have national or regional hubs. When I say regional, so for example, we'll have an EU hub, and this is what the roundtable is going to be about. We would like to have a representative from each hub also providing advice to us to make sure that the work that we will deliver will be useful, meets the priorities of different regions, and to ensure cross-regional fertilization of different products. At this stage, so we will have different programs. At this stage, we have 4 for which we already have leaders. So we have urban areas and human settlements. David is leading this work. David, if you could, in 3 minutes, say a few words about the urban areas and human settlements. Over to you, David. You are muted, David.
Yep, now we're right. Yeah. Thank you, Amina. Yeah, I'll try to be very quick. Urban areas are responsible for about 60 to 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, 75% of resource consumption, and 50% of waste. I will focus largely on the built environment, including buildings and infrastructure. As highlighted earlier, I will also concentrate on the key social justice aspect of sufficiency, and I was pleased to hear you mention that, Yamina, the equity. In my country, Australia and elsewhere, most efforts to cut emissions are directed at so-called decarbonisation via electrification of energy systems using renewables. But apart from the promotion of the circular economy, especially recycling, there is little effort to curb the increasing material-driven growth that is seen by many as enabling more prosperity. Almost every day, massive new projects are announced, largely ignoring the gross and highly inequitable resource consumption and carbon, especially that embodied in materials and buildings. While we overindulge, our neighbouring countries of Southeast Asia suffer grinding poverty and lack of resources. The Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction recognises that growth in floor area surpasses gains in energy efficiency and renewables, while claiming at the same time that the equivalent of another Paris needs to be built every 5 days for the next 40 years. Can you believe that? The recent sufficiency session of the Buildings and Climate Global Forum Paris urged that such scenarios need reconsideration. Happily, strategies such as adaptive reuse, retrofit, sharing, and increased utilisation of existing stock are being pursued in more developed urban areas, including my own city of Adelaide. A major and understandable aim is to address the housing crisis by increasing supply. The dilemma is that cutting carbon and resource consumption also requires constraining growth in new floor area and upfront embodied carbon. Meanwhile, it is great to see that Lisa Richmond, who you will hear about in the next session, and her colleagues from Architecture 2030 are pursuing a built environment sufficiency hub in North America. That's a real shift in thinking. It's fantastic. As Lisa wrote yesterday, to achieve true climate justice, we must think differently about how we allocate our remaining carbon budget through the lens of sufficiency. We can learn from, so this is my thoughts, we can learn from EU researchers at Aalborg Uni Denmark and elsewhere who have defined budget-based targets by a top-down approach. Carbon budgets can be allocated to countries, cities, sectors, even buildings. Wealthier societies will have a smaller carbon budget than the deprived, and within budget, social housing and services can be prioritised over commercial projects for private profit. Finally, industry and corporations must be engaged to examine how such changes may impact on their business. The reduction roadmap Denmark proclaims wide support from industry for its ambitious cuts, while Megawatt Association France has shown we can live better by consuming less. So thank you for listening, and back to you, Yamina.
Okay, thank you, David. To complement the work that David will be leading on housing in the urban areas, we have Valentin, who will be focusing more on mobility at this stage. Valentin, over to you, please, in 3 minutes' time.
Yeah, don't worry. Hello, everyone. I'm Valentin Stulfoot. I'm an engineer, and I've been working for 3 years as a consulting urbanist, and I am now starting a PhD on sufficiency policies and their modeling. So we can read in the last IPCC report that in 2019, transportation accounted for 23% of global energy-related emissions. And the trends are really worrying, I would say, because emissions are rising everywhere, particularly under the effect of the developing countries. Yet current solutions focus on technology, but these approaches are limited in potential, and risks of rebound effects are not well assessed. The thing is that transportation is crucial to achieve basic need, making it one of the most which is a difficult field to decarbonize completely. So there needs to be a new approach of the problem to be tackled, and in the last IPCC report, there was a suggestion of tackling this problem by demand-side policies to reduce the mobility demand. But behaviors appears to be locked in years of planning and decisions, I would say, and the available techniques. So we need to consider social equity to avoid burdening the poorest, and to leave room for the developing world to reach a certain level of standard. Having said that, sufficiency thinking and policies appears to be, I would something like as an internally consistent framework, I would say, to reconcile these two requirements: on one side the social well-being, and on the other the ecological transition. Of course, alongside technological advancements, but we need to redesign cities and change social norms to achieve this systematic shift.
Thank you, Valentin. And from cities, we move to clothing with Katia. Katia, over to you. You have 3 minutes.
Sure,
and
thank you.
Your bio is online. Everyone is seeing your bio.
I'm so flattered. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Katia Dambletimirova, and you may be wondering what's fashion doing among these very serious topics that we're discussing today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our overconsumption of fashion has reached gigantic proportions. And today, fashion textiles are the 4th most polluting, environmentally pressing consumption domains after mobility, food, and energy use. So it's all real. Recent reports indicate that fashion consumption is also highly unequal, and that the key driving force of overconsumption are the wealthiest 40% of consumers in the global north. If we look closer, we can see that some groups, the wealthiest people in the UK or Italy, for example, have to reduce their consumption by over 75%, while others may be living within the sufficiency limits. Fashion is also a multi-trillion-dollar industry that benefits from neo-colonial power relations and externalizes its environmental and social costs and impacts to vulnerable countries that have weak economies and governments. Over the past decade, the industry focused a lot on marginal efficiency tweaks, and we heard a lot about material innovation. We know that now that, a lot of effort went into substituting materials with those that have slightly lower carbon footprint per unit. However, we also know from other research, such as done by Hodder Kool Institute, that efficiency improvements are just not enough to bring us where we need to go, considering the urgency of climate change and sustainability challenges that we're facing. Carbon footprint of the fashion system today globally should be halved by 2030. This is a very difficult and ambitious task. And instead of making any efforts to reduce it, the industry is actually heading towards the increase of production, and especially production of synthetic units that do not biodegrade and cause havoc at the end of life. Some positive developments that we see in Europe and elsewhere. In Europe, there has been the adoption of the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. However, despite the very good progress, and this is really a flagship initiative globally, this strategy does not incorporate sufficiency principles meaningfully. It relies on the notion that we can recycle and innovate our way out of overproduction and overconsumption. And I don't want to underestimate the innovative potential of the human race. However, multiple research across other domains have shown us that this is just simply not a possibility. What we urgently, before we urgently need, I wanted to mention that we also recently wrote a paper with an NGO called ECOS. It was an attempt to understand how we could mainstream sufficiency principles in the EU fashion policy. It will be shared in the fall. However, it does have its limitation because it focuses on policies and it's like a first stock-taking exercise. We need to move beyond that. We need to move beyond general discussions and really urgently produce solid research to understand the potential of sufficiency measures to avoid demand for fashion and textiles globally, and especially in the global north. We need to have evidence-based research and analysis that will help us understand step by step and build roadmaps how to halve the material throughput of the fashion system. With that, thank you very much, and I pass it on to Yamina.
Thank you, Katia. And now we move on to Pierre Noreau on the digitalization program, given that digitalization is part of our daily life. Over to you, Pierre. Your bio is online. You don't need to read it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yamina, for having me. Thanks to all of the panelists that made it today, and thank you for joining us for the launch of this also important World Sufficiency Lab. Very quickly, I will give you a short overview of the environmental footprint of what we call the information and communication technologies sector, so the digital technology sector, because if you have never read about it, you might be surprised, because estimates vary depending on the methodology, but there is a consensus that the share of greenhouse gas emissions that is due to digital technologies ranges from 2.1% to 3.9% of global emissions. Not only that, but this is a sector whose footprint is growing faster than global emissions themselves. So it is often overlooked for various reasons. The main one is that digital technologies and digital innovations are often believed to create efficiency gains across other sectors, but that claim is actually quite hard to prove academically. And this environmental footprint is multifactorial, right? We need to take into consideration beyond carbon emissions, the water consumption, for instance, of data centers that needs to be cooled for the making of new chips, the extraction of rare earth material, which is often extremely damaging to ecosystems. And of course, the waste that is generated by our digital devices, because only up to 17.4% of our digital devices are actually properly recycled. And of course, the benefits associated with these footprints are mostly captured by the global north countries, whereas the negative impact mostly located in the global south. So why does sufficiency matter? And why is it relevant to mitigate those footprints of the digital industries? Well, first, because actually the digital ecosystem is one of the first ecosystems that considered sufficiency to be a powerful lever. There is an existing community of practice. The term sobriété numérique, so digital sufficiency, was defined in France in 2008, and there are active communities of practitioners in Europe and worldwide, publishing reports, trying to define standards, training themselves, exploring sufficiency in hardware, software, new business models, new ways to interact with digital devices. And just for countries that have a rather decarbonated mix, the individual footprint associated with your digital livelihood is actually 1/3 the consumption of energy of your devices, but 2/3 stems from the production of those devices. And so sufficiency can really help limit the number and strengthen and lengthen the lifetime of our devices. It can be a tool to defeat the many different types of obsolescence with real achievement. For instance, companies that are experimenting with transparent supply chains, such as Fairphone, or new rules that have been adopted, favoring markets for second-hand devices, the right to repair. In France, we have a mandatory repairability index for digital devices since 2021. On the software side, there are communities that are changing the way we develop software to be able to keep your devices for longer, to be compatible with all the software, with all the hardware. Sorry, but this actually waged some cross benefits to other digital ethics challenges, such as protection of privacy, inclusivity, accessibility, attention economics. And for this, we can mention, for instance, the W3C that has just pushed out its World Sustainability Guidelines. A lot of work definitely remains to be done, especially when it comes to forcing manufacturers to be more transparent or facilitating the cultural shift to transform our individual and collective relationship with digital technologies. But this is part of what we'll undertake within the WSL.
Thank you, Pierre. And to make all this work, we are working with Florian Guillanton. Florian, over to you about how to make all the programs and different regional and national communities working through a web platform that should meet the sufficiency requirement. Over to you, Florian.
Thanks, Amina. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and to be involved in this really nice project. Just to present a bit myself, so I'm a designer and I co-founded Control S, which is a digital efficiency and sustainability design agency. So we are actually trying to take head on what Pierre just talked about. We've been doing this for 4 years. We've been working with cities, also with some private actors, into implementing digital sustainability strategies and also building sufficient digital products that answer the needs that are required without consuming too much resources and without asking too much attention also from the users, all the while being accessible to as many people as we can. And so the idea is to apply those principles to this very interesting platform, and also to really be able to build something that doesn't exist yet, or that takes existing principles and that improves them in order for the platform to be really useful, given the urgency of the matters that were treated. That everyone has spoken about for the last 30 minutes. So in terms of methodology, right now, we are in the early phase of the project. So we are currently collecting the needs and also the existing frictions that the different users might have with existing tools. The idea here is to make it as simple as possible to understand how sufficiency policies are implemented and what are their effects, to be able to compare them, and also to for policymakers to really implement them as fast and as largely as they can. And so this comes down to dealing with basically two main types of users. On one side, the scientific researchers who are collaborating and contributing to the platform, contributing to the publication body that will be the really the base of the whole platform. And on the other side, the practitioners and policymakers who are seeking for information about concrete results given by all those publications in the research body. So for example, we had a first workshop last week with the scientific side of the platform. The idea is to reproduce those workshops also on the side of practitioners. So those other workshops are coming in the next few weeks. And once we will have collected all the different needs, we will be able to define a brief, a features brief, and then to choose how to design everything in order for this platform to work as good as we can. So to give you a bit of an idea of the first insights that we had, for example, on the scientific side of the users, the main questions that we collected were regarding the framework that is proposed by Yamina and that will be on the basis of the platform. And there are many questions about how can we make it easier to contribute when it comes to precising the scale of action of different sufficiency policies, or how can we compare different state-of-the-art policies and understand their differences in terms of context, for example, or of who's involved and what were the results. There are so many questions about how do you process the all the different types of data that are into all those publications that are not always in the same format. So this will be a huge challenge as well, in order for the platform to be able to compare things that weren't necessarily made to be comparable in the first place. And also one huge point that will be really useful, mostly for practitioners and policymakers, will be about navigation and research. So this is one of the big challenges, the big using challenges that we will try to address in the coming weeks. And so after that, I'll just leave it to Yamina afterwards. But we will need contributions during the summer on the beta version of the platform. So don't hesitate to reach out to Yamina in order for you to help building this platform and making it as useful as possible.
Thank you, Florian. You see that we are at early stages of building the platform and building the World Sufficiency Lab. And this is why our objective is to launch the Sufficiency First Coalition. And we will have a survey that we are working on, survey that we will open for 1 month, starting from Monday next week until mid-July, in which you will be asked to tell us if you would like to contribute and where you would like to contribute. If you would like to launch, we have other programs that are not listed here. So for example, we have one on health and different one on nutrition as well that are not presented yet here. But if there are other programs that you think are relevant, then we can discuss how to launch them. And also, if you would like to set up your national or regional hub, what we could bring to you is the experience that you will hear a little bit from the roundtable of what has been done or planned to be done in different regions of the world. So keep an eye on our website, and the survey will be open on Monday for your participation. It's really, sufficiency is about co-producing knowledge, and this is how we conceived the World Sufficiency Lab. It's collaboration between scientists, policymakers, practitioners, advocates, with the aim to make sufficiency first a reality. Why? Because that's the only way to keep our planet a livable place. With this, I give the floor to Emmanuel and his invitees for the roundtable discussion. Over to you, Manuel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yamin, and a warm welcome from my side as well. I'm Emmanuel, and with the World Resources Forum, we are long collaborating with David and Yamin, and we are mostly pleased about the launch of the World Sufficiency Lab. Now we will shift towards the second part of the session, which admittedly I think is one of the most interesting components of the World Sufficiency Lab, which is the creation of international, so operating at regional and national scales hubs, which, as Yamina mentioned before, on one side really can foster the cross-fertilization and contamination of ideas in the creation of this sufficiency coalition. But another equally important aspect, if not even more, is actually these hubs would enable the unfolding of the sufficiency concept into local context. So to really understand what does sufficiency mean in global north versus global south, and what could work in a certain context but will not in another one. We have half an hour. I think we're going to try to be as short as possible and then to leave some time for questions. I will quickly introduce the panelists for today. It will not be a very long bio, but I think it's also available online. So for the sake of time saving, I will be quite short. The nice part of this session is we already have 4 different regions. So we will hear from Australia, from EU, from South Korea, and from North America. So starting from Australia, we have with us the pleasure of hosting with us the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of Adelaide, Dr. Jane Lomax-Smith, who is a pathologist with a career in research and clinical medicine. After training in London and Boston, she gained then a PhD in immunology in Adelaide. Among the many different accomplishments, she's held elected office as a city councillor, a Lord Mayor, and an MP for the city when she was also Minister for Education and Tourism. So a warm welcome to you, Lord Mayor. Then we have Ms. Claire Roumet, who is leading the EU policy and strategic partnerships at Energy Cities. Claire joined Energy Cities in 2014 after 10 years acting as a Secretary General of Housing Europe, the Federation of Social Housing Providers. And Claire will give us more details regarding the EU developments. Then we have with us from South Korea, Mr. Young-Pil Lee, who is the Director of Energy Climate Policy Institute. He previously worked as a member of the Democratic Labour Party and Energy Politics Center. And his area of research include climate justice, just transition, energy democracy, post-growth, and ecological socialism. So lots of different aspects that can also give an idea of how vast is the universe of sufficiency, how many angles and perspectives. Together with Yang Pi, we also have Yangjin Wang, who is the coordinator of the Interreligious Climate and Energy Network. I understand that Yang Pi will prefer speaking in Korean, and then Yangjin will kindly provide us with a translation. Finally, we will have a video by Lisa Richmond, who unfortunately cannot be with us due to time differences as she's located in the US. And Lisa is the founder of Climate Strategy Works, which is a strategy and planning consultancy based in Seattle, and a senior fellow with Architecture 2030, which is an North American think tank working to rapidly decarbonize the built environment. And David already mentioned before some of the innovative projects happening in this field. Now, without further ado, I would like to come to you, to Adelaide, Lord Mayor. And I think it's mainly two questions I want to ask in this roundtable. Perhaps I put them together for the sake of time saving, and then you can develop them as you wish. The first question is, starting from your local context, which of course is Adelaide, and if we go enlarging, then it's South Australia and Australia as a continent. What are the priorities that you see when it comes to sufficiency, where it could have the highest impact? And also, what are your expectations for the World Sufficiency Lab and for the creation of these regional and national hubs? What would you wish to see coming out of these initiatives?
I would first like to give you some context. Australia is a whole continent with 8 states or territories. So we're a federation, and my state is as large as Germany and France combined. It's a very significant landmass with under 2 million people resident in it, and a significant number of the 300 Aboriginal language groups. So we have beautiful coasts and deserts, but the city has really benefited from the innovation by the state government. And whilst I have often been enraged by the national government, who have generally been happy to get into bed with fossil fuel companies, the state government has actually done some extraordinary things. Within 20 years, we've gone from 0 renewables to now 75%. And that was because there was a first mover advantage in that once our government legislated to make it possible to build solar panel farms and wind farms, we had a massive private sector investment. And so my city is the capital city, but I've benefited from those changes. And what happened was South Australia was the first state in Australia to pass carbon reduction legislation and have climate change and greenhouse gas reduction legislation. And that has meant that we can get to 100% renewables in this decade. So we're really in a good position in terms of renewables. Of course, we've got lots of sun. And we are now working on decarbonisation. So the city benefits from the location. And I came at this very much like David. I'm obsessed by heritage buildings and the quest to stop landfill. So at the moment, we have 90% of our demolition material. It begs the question, why are we demolishing? But we do. 90% of that material is recycled. So it's not an ideal situation, but at least we have a strategy for dealing with the damage that the development industry does. We've also invested in changes for fast fashion, and we have multiple ways to sell, recycle, and reuse clothes. And in many regards, I think with the cost of living pressures, the cost of energy, there's nothing better than a bit of a recession to make people refocus on what matters in their lives. And I think that this is a moment in time where young people are buying furniture, recognizing they shouldn't have fast furniture. And that's another problem for people in insecure housing, where they have almost throwaway furniture. And in our city, we're also working on a circular economy, and I'm totally obsessed with growing food. So we're taking our back lanes and turning them into harvesting areas, so people can have outdoor experiences and food which is well produced and local. In terms of the city's focus, we're also really focused on climate resilience. And that isn't strictly sobriety, I think, but we are a very hot environment, and climate injustice is extraordinarily significant for our state, because Aboriginal people out of the city can't afford cooling, and they might well have temperatures of 50 degrees in the summer. So we live in a hostile environment, and we have to really have climate remediation in our city. Otherwise, our shops will close, our businesses will go broke. People won't be able to leave their houses if we get up to 45 degrees. So we're doing everything everyone else is doing, but perhaps more slowly than Europe. And for me, what I would like to do is to learn from the experience of others. For instance, we have, and this is just one circular economy issue, we have lots of old people who have piles of x-rays, and they want to get rid of them. But I want to know from your library if it's a viable alternative to take those x-rays and burn them using energy to extract silver. And I think one of the challenges with a lot of recycling, circular economy endeavors is that when you become involved in it, you're not sure that you're actually doing the right thing. And so I would like the data and the information to make sure that what we think is a good option actually is. So for me, the presence of the library and information will make me more able to advise on how we're going to be involved with the circular economy. And x-rays may seem like a small issue, but old people have piles of them, and I don't think they should be going into landfill.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, for first giving us a bit more context. And indeed, the data that you provide us are quite impressive, both in terms of the diversity of the land and, of course, the space that you actually have at your availability and the climate conditions attached to it. And the link between social justice and innovation and sufficiency, it's quite key to this whole conversation. And also how you've been unfolding the different areas where sufficiency could actually play a role, from food, nutrition, up to the built environment. Thank you very much. I would like now to go to Claire. Claire Roumet, who is leading the EU policy and strategic partnerships at Energy Cities. Claire, I think, if I'm not wrong, that you've already been doing quite some work at the level of European cities and how sufficiency could play a role in that. This took the form of a sufficiency coalition and also the publication recently of a sufficiency manifesto. So if you could please provide us a little bit more information about what are the objectives and what are the main takeaways of the sufficiency manifesto, and what are the priorities that you identified for implementation at the EU level. And then, similarly to what I previously asked to Lord Mayor, what are your expectations against this background for the World Sufficiency Lab, and what you would like to see coming out of it?
Thank you very much. And I think it was a perfect introduction not introduction, I think I will just follow on what Jane just really mentioned, because you have done the wonderful description of very concretely what does it mean, sufficiency at local level, and why it's absolutely necessary. So here I will just concentrate indeed on why Energy Cities have started to build on a coalition at EU level. We joined forces with different actors, one being, of course, also Yamina, to try to say, okay, what is the stand now in terms of EU policy regarding sufficiency. Sufficiency is still a word that has, still, I would say 1 year ago at least, it was still a word that was very complicated to understand in the EU policy context. However, sufficiency is always present in every scenario that is built. So every scenario that we are looking at 2040, 2050, when we look at how to reach climate neutrality, in every of those scenarios, there is always a sufficiency part. Big, small, but there is always one. But there is never any policy behind. So it's just like, well, there is a part that we will do, we don't exactly know how, but we will do it. So that's what we told the Commission. We said basically the first thing we wanted to say, and this is really like 15 organizations together that joined forces to say, first, well, this is not coherent. You have sufficiency in your scenario, but there is no policy attached. So how do you think that will happen? The second thing that happened, of course, was the energy price crisis. And this has been really completely shifting the way we could speak about sufficiency at EU level. Before, it was something that was completely out of reach in terms of taking a stand and having some political session to discuss sufficiency. But after with this energy price crisis, and it was really mainly about the price, then we suddenly discovered that indeed, if you don't use energy, so if you reduce your needs, you reduce your dependency, you reduce your incapacity to be able to react to external shock. And it's actually a matter of autonomy. It's a matter of security. And it's not only energy, which is what is super interesting, is that also the energy price got us to think about all the resources. And I think what unlocked the sufficiency debate and what we can currently, I would say, advise or tell to the other part of the world is that it's very important to have sufficiency on the table. It's very important to speak about resource. So I really see that now, if we are speaking about resource-wise, this is something that speaks at the political level, specifically about the security agenda and the autonomy agenda, the fact that otherwise we will not be able to resist to any kind of invasion, to resist to any kind of other shock on the supply chain. And for that, we really need to have some real sufficiency policy. So this is what brought us to build a manifesto, much stronger than we were imagining at the beginning, because indeed this very positive political landscape for sufficiency demands, for sufficiency advocacy, made us really much stronger in terms of what we wanted to ask. What we have asked is indeed to think about having a specific binding target on resources that would complement the targets that we have in the EU law on CO2 and on energy efficiency and on renewable production. So it would help to really have also a binding target on material, so on resource, because it also shows the inconsistency of the current scenarios. A lot of scenarios say basically that we will do everything electric, but this is just physically impossible in the way they want to do it, in the way they want to implement, because you just cannot put everything on the electrification from the day one. I think, Katja, you might be in Netherlands, but in Netherlands, for example, they are currently, they just almost broke their own network because they didn't thought about the timing and the pace. So you really always will need sufficiency, and you always need to basically do a reality check. Maybe finally, just that was our first ask, and the second ask is to align all policy to basically it's just to say you just need to do a reality check of every single EU policy to see whether they are compliant with the scenario that you are putting on the table. And of course, the EU budget is one of the main potential for us, and that's why we joined forces, and that's also why we have more than 80 organizations that once we have designed our manifesto, and I will just put a link here in the chat if so that it can be shared to all. I think that more than 80 organizations have signed the manifesto because they see that it's a very comprehensive demand. That's it.
And just sorry, Manuel, to complement what Claire said. So the manifesto is, the link to the manifesto is available on the webpage of the World Sufficiency Lab in the news page. And I think it was the last news that we had. So it's easy to access it.
Good, great.
Okay, thank you very much, Yamina. And sorry, Claire, just a quick follow-up for the second question. So you mentioned you brought the conversation to a very strategic level. So which makes complete sense from the EU perspective. Of course, with the developments of the elections, it's still needs to be seen how it develops and how it can be embedded. But starting exactly from this perspective of strategic autonomy or competitiveness, long-term resilience, all these kind of keywords, what do you expect from the sufficiency hubs? How can different sufficiency hubs in different parts of the world collaborate to actually achieve higher momentum and higher pressure on international stakeholders?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think we do need to always, I mean, when we decided to have this alliance or this coalition at EU level, it was saying we need to align our narratives, because otherwise we speak differently from the same concept, and then people are lost in front of us. So that's why we really developed the reason why being resource-wise is just wise, and so that it speaks to everyone. So what we would really love also is to learn from other parts of the world and from the sectoral the committees to really make sure that indeed we are all aligned and we are all saying the same narrative, because then they can only reinforce each other. And I also think it's very important because one of the things that we could hope for would be that the IPCC is also helping. I mean, I think for us, what we would like to is to have a resource pillar into the energy and climate governance, because we have a very complex governance framework, so that indeed we can see if every single member states, I mean, every single country in the EU is actually doing the effort that is supposed to do for the Paris Agreement. So for us, we would like to have within that exercise of the multi-level governance, we really would like to also have a resource component, because obviously otherwise it's just basically we might be compliant, but then it means that we are just relying on resources that other parts of the world also need. So this resource is a way to just say, well, your scenarios and what you say, what we call the NDC, so the national determined contribution, are they basically reliable and are they realistic with your own resources? So for that, there is also a kind of an agreement to do what they call the SHAMP. So in the IPCC report, they want to really work more on the multi-level governance. And this is why it's very important that also at international level, we do ask the same, so that indeed in the multi-level governance of energy and climate policy, there is a resource pillar. That's why I think, it would be needed.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Claire. This is very clear. And of course, we invite every stakeholder then to come on board and join these initiatives. Now we are going to Korea, so to Mr. Yang-Pil Lee and Ms. Youngin Hwang. The questions for you, Yang-Pil, are basically the same. We would like to have a bit more information about what is the local context in Korea, what is the conversation around sufficiency in South Korea, and also what are the priorities identified in your context, or at least the way you approach it. And then finally, what are the expectations that you have for the World Sufficiency Lab and what you would like to come out of it? As I understand it, we will have the opportunity to train a little bit our Korean, because Young Pil will first speak in your mother tongue, and then Yang Gin will translate to English. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you for inviting us. My name is Jang In. I'm a coordinator at Interfaith Religious Climate Ecology Network in South Korea. And we changed our plans, so I'll summarize the current context based on our discussion yesterday with Jang Pil. And Jang Pil is a research director at Energy Climate Policy Institute in Korea. And we're really scratching the surface at the moment, so we don't have a whole lot to share, but we would be happy to share the current context of Korea. A couple of months ago, we formed a group that began really investigating this concept of sufficiency, which hasn't been yet introduced in Korean context. So the priority to answer the first question would be for us to create a social platform and foundation, like we're starting now. Currently, the group has researchers and activists, where we are beginning to learn about the different cases, like some of them were shared today. The cases where the word sufficiency is applied on the policy level and how they may be implemented on a community and local level. And so the current central government of Korea, it is based on rather efficiency development model. It has an assumption that there will be an infinite rise of energy demand, which is based on the GDP growth rate, climate change, the growing fourth industry, and electrification of the industries. So this self-centeredness really shows that there is no plan to control the energy demand. And we see sufficiency as a paradigm that can provide an alternative that will seek not only, like Yamina said before, not only to change individual behavior, but to create a more system that enables the application of the concept sufficiency into the daily life and the local and community level. And in Korea, there is an increase of different modes of energy supply, which is also a big problem. Not an energy transition, it has been said by scholars and policymakers abroad as energy addition, that we have, while on the one hand, we have closed down the old coal power plants, but we're increasing our nuclear and gas power generation. We're expanding, on the one hand, renewable energy resources, but we're also expanding hydropower and other forms of fossil fuel-based power generation. So there is really a need to evaluate and not just criticize, but to be able to suggest a different model. And with World Sufficiency Lab, we're excited to learn from a resource pool like what was it, Sufficiency Library or Sufficiency Economy, or forums like this, webinars like this, so that we can learn about how they are being applied in different sectors like industry, buildings, housing, and the transportation. So that we can model after it and think of how we can apply that in the context of Korea. And we're hoping that we'll grow our network so more organizations in Korea can also join as part of this initiative that we're beginning. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yoonggin. And it's very interesting to learn more about the Korean context, as you said, just starting to scratch the surface. But I think what you mentioned also gives a tangible idea of how the World Sufficiency Lab can, and the hubs component can be helpful to individuals committed, organizations committed to provide an alternative, at least including sufficiency into national policies. You mentioned the energy case in South Korea, where at this point in time, the focus is on efficiency. And based on previous presentations, of course, France and the experience of France then could be helpful in seeing how policy elements could be replicated, adapted, or taken into account. Thank you very much. I would like also to thank you, Yangin and Lord Mayor, specifically for joining us, because I understand it's quite late for you. You're quite into your evening, so we're very thankful for your participation. We now have one last speaker, which is Lisa Richmond. As I mentioned before, she is unable. I mean, Yangin and Lord Mayor already made huge efforts to be here. For Lisa, it would have been even more costly, because I think it's quite early in the morning in the US. So she has provided us with a video that we will play now. And in the video, we will learn more about the work happening in North America, and perhaps also some interesting news regarding what's kind of hub is coming up in the region.
Hi, I'm Lisa Richmond. I am a senior fellow with Architecture 2030, which is a US-based think tank focused on decarbonizing the built environment through practice innovation, market transformation, and policy change. Over the past 20 years, we've worked to decrease operating and embodied carbon through industry goal setting, like the 2030 Challenge, model policies like the Zero Code, and practice tools like the 2030 Palette. And more recently, we've expanded our focus to include decarbonization of the exterior built environment, including landscape, infrastructure, and planning, the promotion of building reuse, the advancement of traditional and indigenous building knowledge, and culture-informed climate action. Sufficiency is our newest priority, but it's deeply resonant with the design-led passive strategies that we've always emphasized. We know we can't stay within our carbon budget without sufficiency. The most recent global status report for buildings and construction made it crystal clear that any global gains that we've made in energy efficiency and operating carbon have been more than offset by an exponential growth in floor area. Sufficiency has been the missing leg of the stool. We also know that we've got a significant climate justice issue in the way that we allocate our remaining carbon budget, and continuing business as usual will just continue those disparities. So sufficiency thinking gives us a great tool to promote climate justice. Efforts like the World Sufficiency Lab are critically important to us. Time is short, and we need to be sharing best practices and ideas as quickly as possible. Architecture 2030 looks forward to contributing to this global conversation through the World Sufficiency Lab. We are currently working to establish a North America Sufficiency Hub with 4 goals in our first 2 years: to create a practice toolkit for our practitioner network, to create a menu of policy options for national and subnational governments, to establish data-driven targets, to drive and measure progress, which is consistent with the way we've always worked, and to launch an education and advocacy campaign to normalize sufficiency thinking. Architecture 20 is philanthropically funded, which means we need to pursue funding for each new initiative, and we're dedicated to finding resources for Sufficiency Hub and actively looking for those right now. Being affiliated with the World Sufficiency Lab is going to be a big shot in the arm for us as we go out and look for this support. In the meantime, we're going to continue to use our platform and networks to advance a conversation about the role of sufficiency and climate action in the built environment. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very much to Lisa for her contribution. And it's quite promising and encouraging to see already so many detailed objectives and ideas for the hub that will come out of North America. As we said at the beginning, this is just the start of a journey which promises to be engaging, fruitful, and enriching for everybody. And they could also prove quite instrumental in moving from sufficiency as a theory or as a concept into real implementation into specific local contexts. To really see what works and what doesn't, and how can sufficiency best serve the objectives that it has set out in the definition that Yamina mentioned before. As World Resources Forum, we will be happy to be part of this adventure and keep contributing. And for now, I'd like to give it back to you, Yamina, for, I would imagine, a round of Q&A and then the closing.
Yes, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you to all our speakers. Maybe one point that is in the chat that people cannot see, that Claire put in the chat, is that in case you would like to continue this discussion about to learn more about what's going on at the EU level on sufficiency, at 14, just after our webinar, there will be a high-level policy discussion as part of the EU Sustainable Energy Week, and this is something that you can follow online. Just for your information, as a reminder, having a high-level policy discussion on sufficiency was out of the scope of in the EU until last year. The first time the word sufficiency appeared in a Commission document, it's the Foresight report, where they did imagine a scenario on sufficiency that would lead to the autonomy of the EU. And thanks to the work of this European coalition, that now we have sufficiency discussed as part of the EU Sustainable Energy Week. Regarding the questions that we had, I would like to thank all the participants for their questions. I will pick up, we have answered almost all of them, but I will pick up some of the questions about, for example, the regional representation that we have today. It is true that we have only OECD countries once again in this regional in today's webinar. We couldn't secure participation from non-OECD countries. However, we are working with colleagues mainly in Africa and Brazil. And for example, the nutrition program will be led by a colleague from Africa. But we do welcome contributions from and contacts in developing countries, because sufficiency is needed everywhere in the world. But sufficiency narratives, how to implement it, the measures to consider are different in the South than those in the North. In the South, it's basically about allowing to catch up in terms of access to modern amenities without by reducing at the same time, while reducing the environmental impact, while in the North it's basically more about reducing because we have too much from, most of us have too much, not everyone. And then the other question that was in the Q&A box is about how to collaborate in the future and how to get involved. I think I went too fast on this, so I will come back to it. So the aim is to build the sufficiency first coalition. We will build the coalition through the national or the regional hubs. So it could be, when I say regional hubs, so for example, we have the EU hub, but we will have national hubs. For example, we will have French and German hubs in the EU. But if in other regions they are organized at national or regional level, so it's up to the local, the national, or the regional experts to decide how to organize themselves. And to know who would like to build a hub or which program you are interested in, we will have this survey open between June 17th and July 17th. And it is in this survey that you could express your interest in either working in one of the programs that already exist or suggesting another program. In the Q&A box, there were several suggestions and suggesting another program. And in this case, what we discussed with the current program leads is to look for a co-lead for each program. Each program should be led by 2 people, and the co-lead should be currently the leaders are all from the OECD countries. So the co-leads must be from the South, and we seek also gender balance. Today we have only Katja to rebalance a little bit. So in the future, we would like to have more female co-leads or leaders of the programs. Another question is how the lab is going to work. And I went through this. Maybe this question came from some people who came a bit later. So we are the funders, and then we will have the scientific committee to give us advice to make sure that the work that we will be delivering is science sound. And for this, you can apply to join the scientific community, the scientific committee by July 15th by sending you have all the information here, what is needed, your CV and motivation letter. And then we will come back to you in September with the final selection. We will also have, as I mentioned earlier, the HABs committee, because it's important to have this cross-fertilization between HABs and to identify the priorities between at national or regional level. And the international side of the World Sufficiency Lab will be facilitating the discussion and ensuring cross-fertilization through different programs and different regions of the world. I think I should, with this, have answered most of the questions. My colleagues have been answering, all the speakers have been answering the other questions. We welcome your contribution. This is bottom-up initiative, but with support. We have support from different institutions in France and beyond France, and we are seeking support from international institutions to embed sufficiency in international reports and international decisions. I think it was Claire who mentioned that. So one thing that we will be doing, for example, regarding the IPCC, there will be the first report from the new cycle of the IPCC that started last year is going to be on cities. It's a special report on cities, and to ensure that this time sufficiency will be in the IPCC report with no challenges for the authors. So we will be launching special issue on sufficiency in cities, and the condition to be accepted in this special issue, so with scientific work, is that we call scientists to team up with practitioners, and we call to team up with teams from the South to ensure that the Global South is represented, because the Global South is the missing piece usually in all this international work. So this is really the first step. It's work in progress. And I think I will give the floor to David, if you have a last word to say, and then I will close the meeting after David. Thank you. David, over to you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I think Deanne really started off us really well by highlighting the good habits in France have taken root, and then she mentioned the word the sufficiency reflex. I like that term. So when we're making decisions, we consider the sufficiency option. And then I'll just pick on a few points, but I think Katia highlighted the same sort of issue that I was talking about with buildings, that the fashion consumption needs to halve by 2030. So there's a huge shift required. Yeah, and then I thought, just picking a few points, but what Claire mentioned about resource-wise is an excellent suggestion. She said, why being resource-wise is just wise. So I like that expression because in climate policy, certainly here in Australia, there's very little, hardly any mention of resources. So they're just a few points. And yeah, from Korea, it was really great to hear from Jung Win and Young Pil. And obviously, Korea is very keen to collaborate with others, and I'm sure we would be keen to collaborate with Korea too. Yeah, I myself have some fairly strong connections with Korea. Yeah, so that would be great. And then Lisa Richmond again mentioned the climate justice issue, and which I mentioned about the growth in floor area had exceeded the gains by energy efficiency and renewables. So I think I'll just stop there. We're almost up to time. So I haven't covered everything, but I just think, and also I should really thank Emmanuel for moderating so well as he normally does. Yamina and I have been involved in a number of webinars with Emmanuel, and he's just marvelous. He's got a very nice manner and engaging, and so thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you, everyone. Back to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. It's just the start. This is really the first, this is a baby step that we are making. We have been thinking about it for more than a year with David, and I am so happy when I see the number of participants and the number of people who registered to the webinar. Next step, you will hear from me next week with a summary of the next steps. If you would like to be part of scientific committee, you must be a scientist. If you would like to join the coalition, there will be a survey, and your proposals, your suggestions are all welcome. The World Sufficiency Lab, it is a bottom-up initiative for collaboration for the metamorphosis of our world. With this, I close the webinar, and I would like, before closing, big thank you to Sarah Thompson from Sciences Po, who has managed to organize everything. Without Sarah and without the support of Sciences Po, this webinar would not have been possible. Thank you all, and see you next time, and you will hear from me next week. Bye.